Welcome, everybody, to Editing in Rome. Now, I made a decision about this lesson, and the decision I made is not actually to build the editing process for you and to show you the way I do editing, because I think you have been so far through the course now that you are ready to start building processes of your own. So, this class will be more of a tips and tricks for your editing with some different ideas for you. And then you can choose exactly how to implement your own editing process. And actually, I've linked to the Smart Blocks build process Smart Block at the end of the lesson so that you can actually have a go at building your own process. There is enough in here for you to know exactly what I do when I'm editing, so it's not like I'm taking something away from you. What I'm doing is giving you the opportunity to learn how to fish. So here we go. We're going to talk about editing. So what is the lesson goal for today? The lesson goal for today is tips for editing your output. So we are going to head on over to the thesis and we're going to use the thesis sample for me to show you some of the ideas of how you can use editing within your create process. So let's head over to the thesis example. Okay, so what we did in the last lesson was we talked about the writing into the outline. And we talked specifically about the section headers, which are usually the Q notes and the Z notes, but sometimes can just be a statement page or an area page. So in this course, I'm going to show you. Let's open up the section page. And let's have a look at what I have included in your section header that might help you in the editing phase. So the goal of editing is to really separate it into its own session. Okay, so don't try not to write and edit at the same time. This is something I learned from creative writing. I've carried it over into my academic writing, and it helps very much for you to get out your initial draft first in a writing session and then move on to your editing session. So the question becomes, if you are in the middle of the writing session and you realize there's something that you need to do in your editing session, how do you take care of that thought so that you can move on with your writing and not be distracted? And that's where the section tasks and the section notes come in. So the way that I do it is I do it through using the really neat alias function. And you've probably used page aliases. I actually use them a lot when I want to refer to a page but not actually put in the long name of the page. But you may not be aware that there is block references, aliases, which are super useful for editing. So let me show you how we use those. Let's say we have come back, we have written this first draft in our writing session. And now we have come back and we are within our editing session, right? So within your editing session, I don't need to teach you how to edit. You all know how to edit. But there are a few tips of editing in Rome that help. So let's say you have finished your topic sentence, but you have a task in your topic sentence. You want to, let's say you don't know, I'm making this up, but let's say you don't know what other publicly available publishing platforms there are, and you want to add a task to actually research and name the other publicly available publishing platforms. So there are a few ways that you can do that. You can choose to add your task within your actual writing, okay? And or you can choose to put it at the end of put all the tasks at the end of the paragraph. So here's an example of building a process that works for you. So I'm going to show you both and you can decide which way you would like to do it. So let's say you've decided that you want to put your task right into your paragraph so you know exactly what you have to do. And you want to use the referencing, the commenting alias feature to do so. There's a few ways to do that. As you will see, I have highlighted publicly available publishing platforms within the sentence. If I want to create a section task out of that, the first thing I would do is I would go over to the section tasks and I would actually write what the section task is. So the section task is to find out the names of other publishing platforms. Okay. Now, that's pretty easy for you to run through these tasks on this page if this is a very small section. But as your thesis grows and you start combining more of your sections together, you're going to find that you'll see a task that says find out the names of other publishing platforms, but you're not quite sure why you wrote that down or what exactly it refers to within the context of what you have written. So the way to do that is to go back to where we were, highlighting that text, and sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble highlighting here. And there's two ways of doing this. The first way is to go directly to the text and click Command K. And when you click Command K, you'll see what has happened. You'll see that Rome automatically put the text that you have highlighted within a single bracket. And right after that single bracket, Rome has given you a single parenthesis. Okay? What you need to do is reference your task within that parenthesis if you want the task to be sitting within the context of what you have written. So the way you are going to do that is you are going to collect the block reference. So you collect the block reference by just simply going to the section task, right-clicking, choosing copy block reference, and actually just pasting your block within that section. And what you'll see is when I click off, this piece of text is highlighted, indicating to you that there's something that needs to be done with that piece of text. And when you hover over it, you will see the task pop up. You can't do anything with that task, of course, but if you have your section task, if you have your section page open, you will immediately see that the task is available right here. So you'll know exactly what to do. So that is one way of doing it within the paragraph. Let's say you didn't want to do it within the paragraph, but you wanted to have all your section tasks at the end of a paragraph. You could either simply just option drag over all of your tasks into the paragraph area, which is pretty messy. I wouldn't really want to do that, but you could do that. Oh, why is my... Excuse me while I make sure this drags it over. So that looks pretty messy, and you're going to probably get annoyed with seeing all these to-dos in there, but if that's your thing, you could certainly do that. Or you could just make a list of tasks at the end of your sentence. And the way that you would do that is you would type a backslash, type alias, and then in the single brackets, task 1. And then inside the parentheses, you can either get the block reference that we already copied, or again, do your double parentheses and start to search for a block reference. So that's two ways of keeping your tasks in order so that when you edit, you can easily just run through and find the things that you need to do. You can use the section notes in the exact same way. So perhaps you're not ready to complete an actual task, but you want to have a conversation with yourself about what you have written. And the way that you would do that is a similar way using aliases. So you could just leave your notes. If the section is small enough, you could just leave your notes under the section notes section and run through them every time you visit this paragraph. But If the section that you have written is getting extremely long, you're not going to be able to tell exactly which note is aligned with which area of your thesis. So let's say you want to ask the question, where did the let's make it not a question because maybe it's just a conversation with yourself. Maybe you're just going to say, I think this is a subject that I should explore further. Okay, that's your little note to yourself. But what subject? What do you need to explore further? Well, let's say that the subject you need to explore further is the uh, the publishing practices. Let's say you're not 100% sure what the publishing practices are. You don't know it. You don't think it's a task because it's not absolutely necessary that you put them in here, but you think maybe it's a line of thought that you should follow. You could do the exact same thing we did above. You can just highlight publishing practices and you can press Command K, and there is your single brackets and your single parentheses. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to search for this note that I want to align with publishing practices. I'm going to go ahead and type in my double parenthesis. I'm going to start typing so that I can find what I was writing, and it's right there, as you can see, it pops up. Click on that. And then when you click out of the sentence, you'll see that publishing practices is highlighted, meaning there's something that you need to do with it. When you hover over, you can actually see the direct note that you put on that term. If you are really, really lucky enough to have a supervisor that works within Rome Research, I don't, but perhaps you do. This is also a way that you can cheat commenting. So Rome Research does not have the commenting features of Microsoft Word or one of the other word processing tools, but you can cheat commenting by using aliases and leaving messages for whoever you are conversing with, be it yourself, which is the most likely person, or your supervisor. Okay, so that is how we would use section tasks and section notes while we are editing. So what else are we going to deal with when we are editing? Well, the next thing you want to do is you want to try and keep track of where you are in each section of your outline. It is incredibly common when you are writing a thesis not to write through, right? It's non-linear. When you're writing a first draft of a creative writing piece, it's very, very normal to start at the beginning of the story and write all the way through to the end. Not everyone does that, but that's probably the most classic way of writing in creative writing. That is not the case in academic writing. You're working on a section, you decide to work on another section. So how do you keep track of where you are in your outline while you are editing? And the way that we do that is we set up our own version. And again, this is me asking you to build a process of tagging. So I'm just going to go back to version. No, actually, I'm not. I'm going to close this and I'm going to say, okay, this is the version that we are working in. We know for a fact that we are still working on this version. So I'm going to call it active. Now, you will notice that I use the word active a lot. But if you would like to know what is active, it's probably best to preface the word active with something like outline active. I use source active because I go looking for active sources a lot. So if you want it to be distinct between the type of page that you're looking for, you could put outline active there. Let's say this one is a first draft. You could actually just type first draft. And let's say that this one is section complete. This means that when you go to your outline page, and again, this is a very small outline, but yours will be probably quite long. When you go to your outline page, you want to be able to quickly see where you are at with each one of your sections that you are working on. So put together a process and make sure that you are using outline section tags. So the next editing step, let's talk about versioning. I said to you, don't be too precious about your outline because your outline constantly changes. So let's make an assumption that we have realized that this outline where we have actually written in some text is actually wrong. Everything is in the wrong order, and this paragraph actually doesn't even belong in this section. It belongs somewhere else. If you were to try and do this type of editing in Microsoft Word or in Scrivener, you're going to run into a lot of problems because it means that you basically have to open a new Microsoft Word document and keep track of everything that you have moved so that you don't lose pieces of text as you move stuff around. We don't have that problem in Roam Research because we have multiple versions on the same page. It's as easy as clicking back into the other version to make sure that we haven't left anything behind. So let's assume that we want a version 3 of this particular outline. What we are going to do is we are going to hover over the versioning number that is dark, that has the total number of versions in it, while we are in the version that we want to change. And we are going to right click on that version and we are going to say open in sidebar. And when we open this in the sidebar, that means that this version will stay open even when I move to version 3 on the main page, which is what we want to do. So let's say I'm making a new version today. And what I have realized is that I have all these things in the wrong order and this paragraph doesn't belong where it sits right now. Just going to move this over a little bit. You have a few choices. And again, I'm giving you a few choices so you can make your own process. You can decide that you want to keep your previous versions and see where everything came from, or you can decide that you want to clear out a previous version and build a new version so that when you look at your version 2 page, it's blank because it means you've done everything. So that is a personal choice that you need to make that you are most comfortable with. You could try both ways and see what works for you. So let's say that we want to keep version 2 and we want to know that we've moved things around. So the way you're going to do that is you're just going to hold down Option and you're going to drag. So let's say I think that this question should actually be on the top level of this outline. You'll see that it comes in as a block reference. You can revert it to text with alias if you want, using all of the features that we used while we were writing. And then I've decided that Digital Revolution needs to be on the bottom under here. And I've also decided that this paragraph really belongs under this question. I would just simply do the same thing, hold down the Option and move it over here. And you'll see that we need to apply the children to get all the text, and we are done. So that is the first way you can do it if you want to keep track of what your version looked like before you started playing around with it and moving it. If you want to clear out your previous version so that you can make sure you've taken everything and that you haven't left any text or lost any text, you can simply just drag them across. So you don't need to hold down the Option key, just drag them and they will move from this version into this version. To be honest, this is the way that I prefer to do it. I can easily export the previous version. So I have all the content. I'll just export it into a JSON page. So I have all the content if I make a mistake and I need to upload it. But for me, I like to move to a new version and make it clean. But again, it is absolutely your preference. And however you would like to approach it. So the last thing is, while you are editing, you're going to need to prepare your document for export. So the way you are going to do that is you are going to make sure that anything that you don't want in the output is gone. So let's say that we had a Z note in here. Let's say this Q note actually had become a Z note. We'll just say that for now. Um, and you'd written into this section, you don't want this to show up in your export, right? You want to start with the topic sentence. So you need to make the decision as to whether you are going to write in full underneath your section so you don't need the section titles, or whether you are going to make your Q notes and Z notes reflect your section titles. And either way is fine. But you definitely want to make sure that as you do that, as you clean up, you're removing the tags because you don't need, now this is right before you export, when you're absolutely ready to send something out. You can remove the tags, you can remove the word counts, you don't need that. So it's just as you're going through and you're updating. If you have references that you chose text to alias because you always wanted to be able, excuse me, reference back to where you got that from, these need to be deleted before you export. And that is because there are some serious limitations with Roam export, and that is because if you leave this in, it will reprint the reference in the way that we're going to choose to do the export. So just take them out. If you want to make sure that you have a version with the reference to the block references in it, export a JSON first, store that somewhere else, and then clean this up and get it ready for export. So you don't have to actually remove all of you're going to assume that all of your tasks and all of your aliases have actually been resolved. So you're not going to have to worry about removing those. They're not going to be there. But you do want to make sure that none of this messy stuff with the tags and the Q notes and Z notes are in there. Okay. And that is really that for editing. So, in summary, make sure that you have developed a clear process for editing so that you don't wander around your thesis making very little progress. So, what that means is that just like we built processes for all of the other sessions within the other sessions, go onto a page, create a page, write on the top of the page, editing process, or however you decide to. I usually start all of my processes with an X. However you decide to document on your processes and standardize the naming. And then all you need to do is click JJ and run the build process smart block. And when you run the build process smart block, it not only gives you the template for what you need to fill out, but it also has instructions in it. It tells you exactly how to fill it out. So it'll be very simple for you to go in here, use this smart block, and create an editing process for yourself. So that is the course in action for you today, to actually go in and try and build yourself an editing process. The better you get at building processes, the better you are going to get at your academic writing, because the easier it's going to be for you to move into session to session because you know exactly what you're doing. So that's a good thing for you to start to try to do at this stage in the course. So that's it. What's next? What's next is how do we get all of this out? So the next lesson is exporting in Roam, and that is our final lesson. So you're almost there. Onwards and upwards.